Do you understand what your silence cost her? He nodded. Yes, ma'am. Then don't waste it. Speak. He did. Everything. The jokes in the locker room, the way Brenner targeted women he thought had no connections, the patterns, the nights they drank after rough calls. He gave names, dates, places, enough to connect 3 previous complaints, and paint a picture no defense attorney could whitewash. By nightfall, Maya stood in front of the city oversight committee with a thumb drive in hand and a statement that made the room fall to pins and needles. Justice doesn't arrive with fanfare, she said. It arrives because someone refuses to look away. She locked eyes with every member of the board. That someone was a young woman in a public park. She remembered what dignity felt like, and she remembered who once gave it to her. And because she refused to go quiet, we now have a chance to root out not just an offender, but a culture that let him thrive. No one clapped, but no one looked away either. In Palm Hollow, the real work had just begun. The next morning, Palm Hollow buzzed beneath the surface. People didn't shout, they didn't protest, but the whispers had started. At the corner barbershop, old men folded newspapers slower than usual. At the diner, servers paused longer by tables when conversations turned low and serious. And at Miss Clara's laundromat, a place where secrets were rinsed with bleach and softened with dryer sheets, something rare happened. Women started talking. Maya Williams stood just inside the doorway, dressed down in jeans, a fitted coat, and the same steel gaze she wore in uniform. She had come not to interrogate, but to listen. And when Sharon McBride arrived, there was a chair waiting and a pot of coffee already hot. Sharon was now 32, short hair, eyes tired but alert. She sat stiffly, hands clenched around a purse with frayed edges. You sure this ain't just for the press? She asked, barely looking at Maya. I don't do press, Maya said. I do truth, even when it hurts. Sharon's jaw flexed. They made me feel crazy, like I was exaggerating. Said there was no camera footage, said I should take it as a compliment. Maya nodded, not interrupting. It was 5 years ago, Sharon said, voice cracking on the edge of memory. I was pulled over for a taillight. He, Brenner, said I looked nervous, told me to get out of the car, said he had to search me. Then he put his hands where they didn't belong. I froze. Like I always do when I'm scared. She wiped at her eye quickly. I filed a complaint. You know what Internal Affairs told me? Your story doesn't line up with officer behavior. Maya's hands were folded in front of her, still and deliberate. They told you that because they didn't want the story to be true. Sharon looked up. Why now? Why are they listening now? Because Autumn Wade wouldn't sit down, and because someone else, me, remembered you didn't deserve to be erased. Sharon sat back, exhaled. You want me to testify? I want you to be heard. Silence. Then a small nod. Okay. Later that day, Maya stepped into a cramped records room behind the 9th District station, where dust danced like nervous energy. She scanned more files, more whispers on paper, redacted reports. Anonymous complaints, same phrases repeating like rot. Unsubstantiated, miscommunication, muskni. Officer acted within protocol. But the names started repeating too. Luke Brenner, Luke Brenner, Luke Brenner. She was building not a case, but a pattern, and patterns were harder to dismiss. That evening, she met with Autumn at a quiet tea house run by a Vietnamese couple who called everyone sweetheart and remembered your order after one visit. It was quiet, safe, and wrapped in the smell of jasmine. Autumn sat with her legs folded, hands around a warm mug. She looked tired but clearer, like someone learning how to breathe without bracing for pain. There's a girl, Autumn said quietly. She messaged me after the story broke. Said she was too scared to go to the police, but she remembers Brenner patrolling her school bus stop when she was in middle school. Said he used to ask her if she had a boyfriend. Maya's jaw tightened. She willing to come forward? Autumn shook her head. Not yet. We don't rush them, Maya said, but we don't let them disappear either. Autumn looked up, and for the first time, her voice held purpose. Why do they always think silence means safety? Maya smiled gently. Because they've never heard what silence sounds like when it breaks. That night, Maya stood in front of a corkboard in her small apartment. Photographs, incident reports, screenshots of text messages from women too afraid to sign their names. And in the center, the word pattern, red yarn stretched between pins. Sharon, Autumn, the bus stop girl, Slater's confession, the veteran's witness. One truth linked them all. Brenner didn't slip. He hunted. And the system? It held the door open for him. She took a pushpin, marked the next lead. Then she stood back, eyes fierce. Palm Hollow thought it was whispering, but it had just begun to roar. Palm Hollow's City Hall never felt like a place where truth belonged. With its marble floors and polished brass railings, it seemed more designed to silence voices than amplify them. But that morning, as the council chamber slowly filled, truth came anyway. On quiet feet, in calm voices, through the trembling hands of women who had waited far too long to be believed. Autumn Wade sat near the front, her back straight, despite the tremor in her fingertips. She wasn't here to relive pain, she was here to break a wall, to make sure no one else had to sit where she had sat, alone on that park bench, unsure if anyone would believe what had just happened to her. Beside her, Sharon McBride held her own story like a burning coal, knowing it could finally light something greater than grief. At the far side of the room, Sergeant Maya Williams leaned against the back wall, not as a speaker today, but as a guardian. Her presence was quiet, unshakable. She didn't need to be at the podium. Her work was already woven into the room, into every document submitted, every witness listed, every tape cued to play. The council chairwoman, a black woman in her late 60s named Elaine Brower, adjusted her glasses and called the hearing to order. Her tone was firm, grandmotherly, and tired of excuses. We're here today to review misconduct allegations within the 9th District. This is not a trial, but it is a reckoning. Autumn was the first to speak. Her voice was steady. He didn't yell, she said. He didn't use force. That's what made it worse. He smiled. He made it seem like what he did to me was normal. She paused, then added, I stayed quiet because I didn't think anyone would care. But then Maya showed up, and I remembered that sometimes justice isn't loud. Sometimes it just shows up and refuses to leave. The room was still. Sharon followed. He pulled me over 5 years ago, she said. Told me I looked jumpy, asked me if I was hiding anything under my clothes. Then he made me step out, and he searched me in a way that made me feel like less than a person. I filed a complaint. They said I was exaggerating. Her voice shook, but she didn't stop. I wasn't. Behind her, a woman in a red blouse stood up. Then another, and another. I remember him from the high school, one said. He used to stand too close. He asked for my number while I was waiting for the bus. I was 13. I didn't come forward because I thought it wouldn't matter. Maya stood now, not to speak, but to place a folder on the council table. Inside, over a dozen affidavits, time-stamped complaints, and a transcribed confession from Officer Slater. Chairwoman Brower looked through it in silence. Then she looked up. For years, she said. These halls dismissed patterns as coincidences. That ends today. A murmur of assent swept the room, not loud, but full of weight. The kind of sound that means something just shifted. Outside, reporters pressed against the glass. Palm Hollow was listening now. After the hearing, Maya walked with Autumn down the front steps. They didn't speak until they reached the sidewalk. That was brave, Maya said quietly. Autumn shook her head. Number that was overdue. Maya paused, then asked, "How do you feel?" Autumn looked out over the city, the skyline softened by morning haze. And for the first time in days, maybe years, her answer came with clarity. "Like I'm finally standing in my own name." Maya gave a slow nod. "That's the first break," she said. "The wall doesn't fall all at once, but once it cracks, it doesn't stop." Autumn finished. They stood there a moment longer, two women bound not by blood, but by a shared truth and an unspoken promise. This will never be silenced again. It was the kind of cold that seeped into your bones, not because of weather, but because of what was about to happen. The courthouse in downtown Palm Hollow stood like a monument to old promises, justice carved in stone above its columns, though most people who walked through those doors had long stopped believing it. But today, something different was in the air. Not hope, accountability, sharper, hungrier. Inside courtroom 3B, every seat was taken. Reporters lined the back wall, notepad screens dimmed to silent mode. Survivors sat shoulder to shoulder, some who had spoken, some who still couldn't, but all here, watching. At the defendant's table, Officer Luke Brenner wore a suit instead of his uniform, but the arrogance remained. His tie was straight, his eyes cold, his lawyer overconfident. To him, this was just a storm to wait out. Another policy slap on the wrist. But seated at the witness stand was Autumn Wade, hands folded, voice level. "I was reading," she said. "He asked for my ID, and before I could respond, he used his baton to lift my dress." She paused. No dramatics, just truth. He smirked like it was funny, like I didn't matter. The courtroom held its breath. The defense attorney leaned forward. "Miss Wade, did he physically touch you?" "No," Autumn answered clearly. "He didn't need to. What he did was an act of domination, of humiliation. He didn't have to touch skin to leave bruises." A ripple of tension passed through the room, the kind that didn't need a gavel to echo. Next was Sharon McBride, calm and composed in a soft gray sweater. She didn't cry. She didn't falter. "I filed a complaint 5 years ago. They dismissed it, but the truth hasn't changed." The defense objected. "Irrelevant history." The judge overruled. "Pattern is admissible." Slater followed, clean cut now, nervous but resolute. "I laughed when it happened," he admitted, "because I didn't know what else to do. I was scared of him, but that doesn't excuse it. I failed to protect her. I failed my badge." The prosecutor, a middle-aged black woman named Reva Langston, closed with firm grace. "This case is not about a single incident," she said. "It's about a man who used his badge to prey on the vulnerable, who believed women without power had no voice. But he was wrong. And today, you, the jury, have a chance to prove it." Brenner never took the stand. His lawyer advised against it, because even he knew the mask was already cracking. As the jury deliberated, Maya Williams sat with Autumn in the waiting room just outside. No uniforms, no media, just two women and the buzz of vending machines in the distance. "You did everything right," Maya said softly. Autumn stared ahead. "I don't feel brave." "Bravery isn't about how you feel," Maya replied. "It's about what you do when you're afraid." Autumn let out a long breath. "What if they let him go?" Maya didn't sugarcoat. They might. But even if they do, the silence around him is gone. He'll never hide in the shadows again. The door opened. Everyone rose as the jury returned. 12 faces. A paper handed to the bailiff, passed to the judge. She read it aloud. On the charge of misconduct under color of authority, guilty. On the charge of harassment with intent to degrade, guilty. On the charge of abuse of power, guilty. Autumn didn't react, not right away. Her hands simply unclenched, fingers relaxing as if they'd been holding breath for years. Brenner didn't look at her. He didn't have the spine. But Maya did. She looked directly at him as he was cuffed, her expression unreadable. Then she turned back to Autumn. You stood, she said quietly. And the world moved. Outside the courthouse, the sky had turned gold. Not triumph, not celebration, just light. And it was enough. The sound of the cuffs wasn't loud, it was the absence of protest. The silence of a man who realized the performance was over, that spoke volumes. Officer Luke Brenner, once the untouchable face of the 9th District, now walked out of courtroom 3B with his wrists shackled and his gaze hollow. The reporters swarmed outside like gulls sensing the scent of rot, but he didn't speak. His pride had vanished long before the verdict was read. Inside, the room remained suspended in something too heavy to be called relief. Not joy, not triumph, just release. Autumn Wade sat back in her chair, breathing slow and deep like someone adjusting to a new kind of air. Her hand clutched the folded note from the little girl in the red dress, the one who had watched her testify 2 days ago. Scrawled in marker, "You're the reason I believe girls can be brave." Maya Williams stood near the exit, arms folded, face unreadable. She'd seen convictions before, she'd seen guilty men walk. But this one hit different. Not because it was rare, but because it had required ordinary people to do extraordinary things just to make truth visible. Next to her, Detective Rowena Fields removed her glasses and whispered, 18 months. You think it's enough? Maya didn't flinch. It's not about the time. It's about the stain. His badge won't ever shine again. Outside, Officer Jim Slater exited a separate side door, accompanied by Internal Affairs. He had taken a plea, suspended sentence, demotion, permanent removal from patrol duty, and mandatory testimony in future misconduct cases. Some called it a deal. Others called it justice, with teeth dulled down. Slater stopped as he passed Maya. I don't expect forgiveness, he said quietly, but I hope what I said helped. Maya studied him, her expression neither cold nor forgiving, just real. You didn't save her, she said, but you stopped lying. That's a start. He nodded and walked away. Later that evening, Maya and Autumn returned to the park, not for ceremony, not for symbolism, just because the place where it began deserved to be seen in a new light. They walked slowly past the bench where it had happened. Autumn traced the worn wooden armrest with her fingertips. There was still a small mark on the planks from where her book had fallen, weathered now, like the memory itself. You ever think it'd end like this? Autumn asked. No, Maya replied, but I never thought you'd be the one to finish it either. Autumn gave a soft, dry laugh. Neither did I. She sat down, not carefully this time, confidently. She looked up at Maya, eyes steady. Can I tell you something strange? Maya nodded. I don't feel angry anymore, Autumn said. I thought I would, but now I feel clean, like I finally got out of something I didn't even know I'd been breathing in. Maya looked at her for a long moment, then sat beside her. That's what injustice does. It becomes the air. You don't notice it until someone cracks a window. Autumn turned her head. You cracked it. Maya shook her head. You kicked it open. The breeze moved gently across the lake, cool and clean. I've been thinking, Autumn said after a while. What if we created something, like a space, for girls like me, for women like Sharon, even ones who aren't ready yet, a place to breathe, to speak. Maya smiled, not wide, but real. What would you call it? Autumn stared ahead, thoughtful. Maybe. The stand, because that's all I really did. I stood. Maya nodded slowly, and it shook the ground. In the distance, the streetlights blinked on one by one, casting a golden path home. Behind them, the bench remained, quiet, ordinary, unchanged. But they had changed, and nothing about that was small. 3 weeks after the verdict, the leaves in Palm Hollow had begun to turn. The great maple at the center of the park, once bare and indifferent, now blazed a soft orange, shedding like it was letting go of something heavy. Autumn Wade sat beneath it on the same bench where everything had begun. But she wasn't alone. Children laughed in the distance. Joggers passed by. Life moved, and this time she felt like she was in it, not just watching from behind the glass. She held a folder in her lap, creased and full of notes. On the cover, hand-drawn in black marker, were 3 words: The Silent Stand. A soft voice pulled her out of thought. "You really named it that?" Maya Williams asked as she approached, a paper cup of coffee in each hand. Autumn looked up and smiled. "It was never silent. I just didn't know how loud it was until someone listened." Maya sat beside her, handing over a cup. Her movements were slower these days, more reflective. She had officially requested reassignment from active IA duty to a new post. Community Liaison for Survivor Support Programs. The title wasn't what mattered, it was the mission. "You've got sign-ups already," Maya said, nodding to the folder. 36, Autumn replied. Most of them high schoolers. A few older women, too. They said they'd been waiting years to speak. Just needed someone to go first. Maya leaned back on the bench. That someone was you. Autumn looked out toward the lake. "I was scared." "That's how you know it mattered." A silence settled between them, not empty, but warm, comfortable. Then a small girl, maybe 8 or 9, approached with hesitant steps. She held a simple white envelope. "Are you Autumn?" she asked, voice soft as a feather. "I am," Autumn replied, kneeling slightly. "My sister said you're the reason she told Mom about what her coach did." Autumn blinked, stunned. "Is your sister okay?" "She is now. She wanted me to give you this." Autumn opened the envelope. Inside was a folded sheet of notebook paper. In bubble letters, "You changed something." "Thank you." Autumn pressed the note to her chest. She didn't cry. She just breathed. Maya reached into her jacket and pulled out a small lapel pin, simple, brass, in the shape of an open eye. "This belonged to a woman I worked with in D.C. before I came back south," she said. "She used to say, justice isn't about revenge. It's about remembering." She pinned it gently to Autumn's coat. "You remember now, and you're helping others do the same." Autumn stood and looked down at the bench one last time. Not with fear, not even with anger, but with gratitude. That this place, this memory, had been rewritten. "I used to think power was something only certain people had," she said. "But maybe it's just knowing your story matters." Maya smiled, rising beside her, and telling it anyway. They walked away from the bench. 2 women, 2 generations, linked not by blood but by a thread stronger. Truth, earned and shared. And as they disappeared into the tree-lined path, the maple above them released a single leaf, spinning gently in the air before landing softly on the bench. A reminder of where it broke and where it began again.